I've been getting a lot of questions about this new study that claimed melatonin use was associated with an 89% higher risk of heart failure that also made rounds in many newspapers. Now, it does sound very alarming because a lot of people are taking melatonin for sleep and its antioxidant benefits. I've even recently been making videos about taking megadoses of melatonin myself. So I wanted to make a quick video about this particular study and why it doesn't change any of my thoughts about melatonin. First of all, the study that everyone's been talking about isn't even out yet. It's an abstract of a study that isn't yet peer-reviewed, and it was shared at the American Heart Association's 2025 symposium. Now, it doesn't mean that the conclusions the authors made were wrong, but we haven't even seen the full data yet, so we shouldn't make up our mind about the conclusions of the study yet. But let's look at the information we do have available. The researchers looked at adults over 18 with an insomnia diagnosis who had more than one melatonin prescription and over 365 days of exposure days per year to melatonin. The control group had no exposure to melatonin. During a 5-year period, the melatonin users had an 89% higher risk of heart failure compared to non-melatonin users. They also had a 109% higher risk of all-cause mortality. First, this is an observational study which obviously has its limitations. The problem here is that yes, they were using insomnia patients who already have a higher risk of mortality as a baseline because of their insomnia. So we don't necessarily know if this would translate over to healthy people who take melatonin for just maybe like an extra 30 minutes of sleep or to get some of the antioxidant benefits. Secondly, melatonin is a prescription drug in some of the countries that were being investigated, like the UK, Japan, Australia, and some European countries like France or Germany. But it's over the counter in a lot of other countries like the USA, Poland, Lithuania, and Estonia. These are all countries included in the TriNetX Global Research Network, from where the researchers pool their data from. So in a lot of these countries, if a doctor prescribes you melatonin, you probably have pretty severe insomnia to begin with. In a country where melatonin isn't a prescription drug, you would just buy it from the pharmacy or order it from online, and you don't need to have severe insomnia. In a country where melatonin isn't a prescription drug, to get prescribed melatonin, you need to have quite severe insomnia as well. And if we presume that there's an equal amount of non-melatonin prescription users in the countries that require a prescription, then these individuals whose doctors didn't prescribe the melatonin probably had much less severe insomnia that didn't require them to get a melatonin prescription. It's also the case that a lot of people in the control group that weren't prescribed melatonin and they lived in a country where you could get melatonin over the counter, there was a lot of people in those countries taking melatonin and not getting flagged in the study because they didn't get a prescription. They could just buy it online. So this means that we don't really know how many melatonin users were in the non-melatonin group because they could just buy the melatonin online or over the counter. So all in all, my overall impression of this study is that having insomnia increases your risk of heart failure and all-cause mortality. We don't necessarily have any direct evidence linking melatonin to the increased risk of heart failure. What I wanted to do in the rest of this video is what everyone else didn't do. Look at the evidence on melatonin's effect on heart disease and other cardiovascular health problems. Because in more controlled settings, we could see if there is a signal for melatonin causing cardiac problems. But we're not going to be able to find that in this kind of observational setting with a lot of limitations. The research about melatonin in randomized controlled trials on cardiovascular disease health is very promising, especially when it comes to lipids and inflammation. A 2019 meta-analysis of 12 trials saw that melatonin supplementation lowers lipids like cholesterol and triglycerides. A 2018 meta-analysis of 8 studies found the same results, and the 2021 meta-analysis of 31 clinical trials saw that melatonin lowers inflammatory markers like CRP and TNF-alpha. They found melatonin to be generally safe with very few side effects. The doses in these studies are a little bit higher than what's usually used for sleep. For inflammation and lipids, the regular dose in these clinical trials was around 10 milligrams. But for sleep, the recommended dose is somewhere between 1 to 3 milligrams. So that's 3 times or even up to 10 times higher. And it was still found to be safe. There's even a large 2021 meta-analysis of 79 clinical trials where they used melatonin from 10 up to 3,000 milligrams. And they found that there were limited side effects and melatonin had a generally good safety profile. So even if you megadose and gigadose melatonin, you don't really find significant side effects. Now, to play the devil's advocate, yes, you could say that these randomized controlled trials, they don't last that long to cause serious health outcomes. They only last for a few months, whereas this insomnia study looked at 5 years. But if we were to look at the mechanistic effects of melatonin, then this 2022 review on melatonin's benefits in cardiovascular disease claimed that melatonin would lessen the development of heart failure by preventing hypertrophy of the heart muscles. It isn't the highest quality of evidence, but we have to work with what we've got here. So as you can see, there's nothing in these randomized controlled trials and these mechanistic evidence that would suggest that melatonin would cause heart failure or that it would increase the risk of mortality. It's actually the opposite. There's quite a lot of evidence that melatonin could actually benefit cardiovascular disease risk factors and potentially heart failure. What's bad for your heart and mortality risk is insomnia, and having severe insomnia means that you're probably using melatonin. So overall, these are the reasons why this new study doesn't change my opinions about melatonin. Some countries need a prescription and others don't, and if you get a melatonin prescription, you generally have worse insomnia. I'm not saying that everyone should take melatonin, but personally I do think that melatonin is a god-tier supplement based on the randomized controlled trials and the mechanistic evidence. If you want to know how I rank melatonin and other supplements, then check out my video where I rank 100 supplements from worst to best.